Hello and welcome to Insights, the podcast with your host, Joe Parnay. Join me in this deep exploration of our personal journeys from ambition to meaning, where we stop living life fast and start living life deep. This is a journey of waking up and realizing that our lives have never been about us, but about others. True success leaves positive ripple effects on other souls. I believe that success needs to be redefined from our own personal ambitious endeavors to be redefined as the value that we leave and give to others around us. Join me now as we begin this journey to deeper connections, even more fulfillment, some fun, curiosity, life, love, and all good things. Your deeper journey from ambition to meaning starts right now. Hey everyone, it's Joe here. Welcome to episode 44. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. Episode 44, we're going to be extending from our 42nd episode, where I shared with you an insight on how emotions come from our experiences and how our feelings come from our thoughts. I want to go another layer. I want to go another level of depth there with how we construct our feelings on a daily basis. I trust and hope that the episode last week, episode 43, if you've had a chance to catch up with that one, on near-death experiences, I'd be curious to know what you thought of that one. I don't know if it was too heavy, if it was too woo-woo, but certainly the intention of me sharing with you my thoughts on near-death experiences and how I use near-death experiences, not from a personal experience, but from vicariously reading through other case studies, how it helps me reset my perspective. So I hope you enjoyed that particular episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, in the words of Molly, do yourself a favor and listen to that one. All right, so episode 44, let's dive in. So in episode 42, when we spoke about emotions and feelings, I shared with you how the feelings that we feel on a daily basis are constructed by our psychology, and that emotions are an organic reaction or response to a more intense or like an intense experience that we don't necessarily have on a daily basis. So the birth of a child, losing someone in our lives, losing our career, beginning a new career, moving country. These are emotional experiences that aren't your everyday experiences. So what I want to focus on, though, is our everyday experiences, because every day the feelings that we feel, we have actually created. And I want to go to another layer of depth here in giving you another deeper insight, if you like, on how it is that we actually are completely responsible for how we continually contribute to how we psychologically construct our reality. So back in episode 42, I shared with you how we've got this stream of consciousness that we have a thought about something, or something takes our attention in the environment, and we have a thought about what that thing means, or what that actual experience means. So we have a thought about something, we cast a meaning on that thought, and then that produces a feeling about that particular thought point or focus point. And this, of course, happens so quickly that the illusion is it's just how I feel. And we know that that's not true, because it's based on something that we've just been putting our attention on. So what I want to show you here, that's going to be an extension to episode 42, where I explored that with you quite deeply, is we're going to go even deeper. So what I want to show you is how it is that when we get deep into the cycle of we have a thought, a meaning, and the feeling that comes from that meaning, well, then what happens after we have that feeling about that thought, we have another thought that responds to the feeling of that original thought. I'll say that again. So I'll give you an example. This is the example I want to focus. And in fact, if you just bear with me, I will give you an example in about another minute or so. I just want to explain this a little bit more thoroughly, though, before I give you the example. So we are continually on a cycle of thought, meaning, feeling. Thought, meaning, feeling. And then the feeling, we might feel excited about something that has just taken our attention. So whatever has taken our attention that excites us, it's the meaning that we've cast on that thought that has produced that feeling of excitement. And then what happens is another thought piggybacks onto that excitement feeling, And then there's another meaning and another feeling. And that second feeling might be relief, for example. And then there's a thought about the relief, and on it goes from there. So I want to give you an everyday example of how we continually layer more and more cycles of thought, meaning, feelings. And sometimes it can get to a point where we are convinced that the way that we feel about our environment is not who we are, but what the environment is. And as I have shared with over 6,000 coaches over the last 13, 14 years, that I've trained out in the field, I mean, we are completely responsible for how we construct our reality. And that can be really hard to take when there's stuff going on in our lives that, let's just say, is unpleasant or not going our way. So let me give you this insight. So let's just pretend we're walking down the street, just having an everyday experience of walking down the street. And on the other side of the street, we see a friend. So our friend takes our attention in the environment. We wave to this friend, but this friend doesn't wave back. They actually can't see us. So the fact of the matter is, we've seen our friend across the other side of the street. We have waved to them. They have not seen us, or they haven't waved back, right? They haven't waved back. So then there's an interpretation of what this actually means. So let's have a look at how this works. So I trust and hope you can follow this layer upon layer upon layer of a psychological construct of reality. Because you see, what happens is, when we have a feeling about a thought about something, that also influences the action that we will take. I'll say that again. When we think about something, or something in our environment takes our attention and we have a thought about it. So in a moment, I'll share with you an example of a meaning that we can give the fact that our friend is across the street and hasn't seen us after we've waved to them. There's all kinds of interpretations that we can give that experience. As I shared with you in episode 42, and Kyle, if you're listening, thank you for your comment on LinkedIn about how you love the meaning-making menu that drops in front of us. Well, this is happening all the time. So, for example, if we're seeing that friend across the road, they don't wave back, that's a micro opportunity for us to be conscious, to be consciously aware of the meaning that we are about to give that experience, because the meaning we're about to give that experience can set the tone of the whole day. Let me show you what I mean. So let's just say that there I am, my friend doesn't wave back, and the meaning that I give that experience is, my friend doesn't like me. Let's just say that's just what out of all the meanings, out of all the choices on my meaning menu, I chose that one, right? Because I'm a victim of my own thinking, right? Let's just say that that's what I am, right? So I say to myself, my friend doesn't like me. Now, because I've created that thought, and that's the meaning I've given that thought, I now feel sad and rejected. That's how I feel. And because I feel sad and rejected, that's going to influence the actions that I will take next, or the action that I'll take that day, or the action that I might take that week. So let's just say that because now I believe, because I choose to believe, the meaning I have completely and utterly made up of this interpretation. Remember, the facts are that I'm on one side of the street, my friend's on the other side of the street, I have waved and they have not waved back. That's the facts. The rest of it is all made up. So my friend doesn't like me is the meaning I give that. I feel sad and rejected. Now I'm going to isolate myself. So my action that I'll take is I'll begin isolating myself, and I might be isolating myself emotionally or energetically or with my body language when I'm walking into the supermarket as my next, piece of experience. So because I'm now isolating myself emotionally or spiritually or even physically, there's a thought that is interpreting that action. And that isolation action will lead to another meaning. And that could be something like, oh, nobody ever reaches out. Nobody ever reaches out to me. So now that's another meaning I've given the piggyback thought of the original thought of how my friend doesn't like me. So now I'm thinking, nobody ever reaches out to me. So now I begin to feel alone and angry. And the loneliness and the anger layers into the sadness and the rejection. And so because of that, I'm going to then perform an action. I might send an angry email to this friend. Now I've sent the angry email, I've pressed send, and now the thought I'm having and the meaning that I'm giving that interpretation of that action is, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And now my feeling is guilt layered in with loneliness and anger, layered into sadness and rejection. And then that leads to an action. What could that action be? It could be whatever action I want to take in the interpretation of my meaning of that thought. And that action could be a self-destructive behavior of some kind, whatever it might be, overeating or whatever it might be. And then the cycle continues, all because of a micro interpretation of a friend across the street who didn't wave back. Now, I could have given that any kind of meaning. So the point I'm making is this, is that our experience of reality on a daily basis is like a layered interpretation of our interpretation of our interpretation of whatever it is that we've experienced. And it goes on and on and on. When we are consciously aware that we are doing this, and I hope that people are understanding, and I'm explaining this as clearly as I can, is that when we are aware that we feel the way that we feel because of how we think, when we are aware of that, we can make a conscious decision to laugh at ourselves, to notice how ridiculous we are with some of the interpretations that we give our experiences. And laughter is one of the most beautiful ways to reset this whole thing, to reset all these thoughts. Do you get that? Because all that happened was, and this is just a made up story, a made up example, all that happened was my friend was on the other side of the street and didn't see me. Now, on the other hand, I could have interpreted that completely differently. I could have interpreted that as simply they didn't see me. Because then I could be thinking, well, have I ever been told that someone saw me in the street today and I didn't wave back or I didn't notice them? Absolutely. But I didn't see them. I genuinely didn't see them. I was in my own world focusing on my next little task or whatever I was doing. So I could have made it mean, oh, they never saw me. That's a shame. It would have been great just to quickly wave and have a bit of a giggle, but I had to move on. Right? Now I'm feeling neutral. I'm feeling indifferent. And as a result of that, I'm not going to take an action that's going to isolate myself. I'm going to keep going with the actions that I was going to take that day of, performing my, shopping for fruit at the fruit market or whatever I was going to do next. Does that make sense? So the point I'm making is that thought, meaning, feeling, and action, I'll say that again, our thought or what we focus on and the meaning that we give that thought produces a certain feeling, and that feeling will influence the action that we will take next. And the action that we will take next will come with its own interpretation of thought, its own interpretation of meaning and feeling, and so on. And we keep going around in these cycles. Now, when someone is a victim of their own thinking, or as the Wizard of Oz, in the original Wizard of Oz, as the wizard said to the, which one needed the brain? The straw man. As the wizard said to the straw man with the original Wizard of Oz, as the straw man said, I need a brain to the wizard. And the wizard said, you don't need a brain. You are simply a victim of your own disorganized thinking. I love that. And so many people are victims of their own disorganized thinking. And you and I have been victims of that as well. And I want to say victim, man, I'm talking about taking responsibility for that. Like, however we interpret the world, it's our interpretation. It's not based on fact at all. It's just simply an interpretation. The fact is we've got one person on one side of the street, another person on the other side of the street, and they didn't see each other. They're the only facts we have to play with. Everything else after that is an echo of interpretation. And depending on the quality of the meaning that we subscribe to that experience will influence the quality of our feelings, which will influence the quality of our actions. And if we keep going around in this circle, around and around and around, unconsciously, we are creating a destiny that is shit. We are creating a destiny that is from hell. We are creating a reality that is just riddled in victimhood. And then what happens is when we're tuned into the vibration, the frequency, the sound, the station called Victim FM, then all we are gathering now is more and more evidence of why this is all true. Versus, hold on a minute, it's versus this, right? Versus, hold on a minute, I have created this experience for myself through my interpretation of my reality. So how about we just get over ourselves and press a reset button and look at things a little bit differently? Do you know what I mean? So it's like I remember once being on. This is a true story now. I remember once being on the road, and I was coming out of a T intersection, and there was a clear way in front of me as I was turning onto this street, and there was a bit of traffic on the road, and this fellow in his car stopped in the clear way, right? Now, my initial egotistical response was I wanted to bip him and say, what are you doing in the clear way? And then I remember I immediately thought to myself, have you ever been stuck in a clearway by accident where you're rolling along in slow moving traffic and then it happens to stop when you're in the bloody clearway? Have you ever been caught there innocently? Yes, absolutely, I have. So by remembering that, so that's the meaning I put onto the thought of that guy being caught in the clearway. Then he looked at me sheepishly, and I just waved to him with a smile and a nod of my head to share with him energetically that I understand because I've been in that situation myself. And suddenly his day will be different, my day will be different, all because of an interpretation of that experience. You and I are continually interpreting all of our experiences all of the time. And depending on our awareness of all of this, 95% of this journey is awareness. And I hope that the insights I'm sharing with you here in this episode is going to expand the bandwidth of your awareness. So when you are experiencing your next experience out in life, out in the street, out in the supermarket, in your business, in your relationship, that you are aware of the interpretation that you are spinning on that particular thought. Because if you let that awareness escape you, then what we're all doing continually, whether we know it, whether we don't, we're layering in all of these interpretations. It's a continual cycle of thought, the meaning I give that thought or that experience, the feeling I get from that meaning, the action I will take because of my feeling. Oh, because I'm taking that action, now I've got a new interpretation with a new meaning, with another feeling. Oh, now that's going to layer onto the next one. So I'll do it again. I'll do it again. What I just did before about the walking down the street. So there I am walking down the street. The friends across the road. I wave happily. They don't wave back. And now my interpretation is that my friend doesn't like me. So I'm now feeling sad. As a result of feeling sad, I'm in an isolating kind of a mood. So I'll perform some kind of isolating action. As a result of the isolating action, the feeling I get from that, the thought, the meaning, the psychological construct that I'm giving that isolation is nobody ever reaches out to me. See, I'm gathering now more evidence to support the victimhood. And because no one ever reaches out, I'm now going to feel alone and angry. And because I'm alone and angry, I'm now going to send an angry email. And because I've sent an angry email, now I'm thinking, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. And now I'm feeling guilty. And because of the guilt, I'm now going to do some kind of self-destructive, self-sabotaging behavior. And then I'm going, life's hard. This is all bullshit, this personal development stuff. Like, it's just, I can tell you my life is hard. If you were in my life, you wouldn't be saying all this. If you knew my story, you wouldn't be, and so on. My Lord. And when we become aware, and that's one of my intentions of creating this podcast series, is to expand our awareness of how we are all continually contributing to the psychological construct of our reality, of our interpretation of reality. Remember, we can't experience reality for what it is. Quantum mechanics says we can only experience our experience of reality. And our experience of reality is the psychological construct that we are designing all the time. It's just a matter of whether we are aware of it or not. So be aware of the interpretation of your thoughts, because as I say to my sons, when Oliver gets a little bit nervous about different things, like the feeling in his stomach, I've shared with him many times, and it's ingrained in his neurology now. I said, that feeling in the stomach is the same whether you are scared or whether you are excited. The choice is yours, hun, which way you want to go. And, I trust and hope that that's empowering him with an awareness of how to interpret the feelings in his body. Does that make sense? So anyway, I hope that that there's something from this episode today that you can take home with you psychologically and also share with others. Thank you again for listening. I deeply appreciate it. And feel welcome, please, to give me 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts if you genuinely feel that you are getting lots of value from these episodes. I'm thoroughly loving it as ever. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode, whatever that might be about. Thanks so much. Bye for now. I'm Joe Pane, and you've been listening to Insights, the podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can now follow my insights on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to being with you again very soon in the next episode of Insights, the podcast.